A piercing cry from a mother halted Bumpy Johnson right there on the sidewalk. The clock struck 2 a.m. on April 25th, 1964, in the heart of Harlem. Bumpy had been heading back from Small's Paradise after wrapping up a discussion with union members on shielding sanitation workers from mob extortion. The evening air felt brisk, the roads eerily still, and exhaustion weighed heavy on him. At 59, fresh out after 11 years behind bars in Alcatraz, his aging frame ached with reminders that his youth was long gone. Yet suddenly, that voice pierced the silence, a woman's anguish, raw and unfiltered, bouncing along the brownstones of 135th Street. It wasn't mere tears, it was a heart-wrenching lament, the sort only a mother utters when her child slips away for good. Any ordinary mobster might have ignored it and pressed on. This had nothing to do with syndicate dealings, turf wars, honor, or cash. Just another young black man getting crushed by the machine. And that machine had been grinding away long before Bumpy drew breath. But Bumpy Johnson wasn't your average thug. He paused, pivoted, and strode toward the desperate plea. Ruth Robinson stood trembling outside the 28th Precinct, her best Sunday outfit drenched in rain and sorrow. 42 years old, she scraped by as a domestic worker, juggling 3 gigs to hold her household together. Her fingers quivered as she gripped a wrinkled sheet and the arrest warrant. Bumpy drew near with caution. In Harlem, approaching a distraught woman without a word could get you sprayed with mace or something far deadlier. "Ma'am," he murmured gently, staying back a few paces. "You okay?" Ruth lifted her gaze, eyes puffy and bloodshot. Recognition dawned slowly. Then she clocked the signature hat, the sharp suit, the confident stance of someone who commanded every inch of pavement. You're Bumpy Johnson," she breathed. "That's right, ma'am." Ruth slumped against the station's wall, sinking to the damp pavement below. "Quote 4, she wailed. Quote 5. Bumpy lowered himself beside her, wincing at the stab in his joints. Quote 6. And so Ruth Robinson unfolded a tale that would push Bumpy to stake his entire post-prison empire. Her boy, Marcus Robinson, Jr., was just 19, with a simple mind. Folks back then labeled it Poica, quote 7. 2 evenings prior, he'd been strolling home from his shift at a Brooklyn market when a pair of white detectives hauled him in for grilling. They claimed a white lady, Sarah Bennett, had been slain in Manhattan, brutally stabbed 57 times in her Upper East Side flat. Her housemate, Lisa Carter, had met the same fate. The press dubbed it the Career Girl Murders. The public clamored for blood. The force wanted a scapegoat fast. Marcus, a black youth without an ironclad story or funds for counsel, fit the bill perfectly. They hammered him in the hot seat for 22 hours nonstop. No meals, no drinks, no attorney. Threats flew. They'd harm his mom unless he admitted guilt. They flashed gruesome scene shots and demanded he recount his supposed crimes. Scared and bewildered, Marcus finally scrawled his name on a statement he couldn't even decipher. Now he sat jailed without bond, facing 2 counts of homicide, with the DA gunning for execution. But he wasn't even in Manhattan that night, Ruth wept. He was over in Brooklyn. His supervisor witnessed it, his pals too. Yet no one's hearing us 'cause he's black, they're white, and that seals it. Bumpy absorbed every detail in silence. Once she'd poured it all out, he pondered deeply before speaking words that shifted the tide. Quote 10. Ruth gaped at him. Quote 11. Bumpy rose, his knees popping like pistol shots. Quote, 12. He fished a fresh $100 bill from his pocket and slipped it into her palm. Quote, 13. Quote, 14. Quote, 15. Then Bumpy Johnson melted back into Harlem's shadows. What Ruth and the world couldn't foresee was how that vow would ignite a feud with the NYPD, the Genovese crime syndicate, and the whole Manhattan DA's crew. Precisely the kind of scrap Bumpy thrived on. Come dawn, Bumpy summoned a huddle in the rear of a soul food spot on Lenox Avenue, his unofficial throne room. He called in 3 key allies. Frank Lucas, his rising protege at 34, eager and driven to earn his stripes. He'd handled the groundwork. Nat Pettigrew, an ex-officer, bounced from the badge for dodging payoffs. He grasped the NYPD's inner machinations cold. Madame Stephanie St. Clair, the iconic numbers boss. Stephanie had reached her 70s, yet her network remained vast and influential. Judges, attorneys, reporters. In Harlem, if intel was what you sought, Queenie was your go-to. Bumpy laid out the facts plainly. Marcus Robinson hadn't murdered those women, though somebody was pushing hard to make it seem like he had. Figuring out the motive was crucial. Frank jumped in right away. Boss, no offense, but what's it to us? This doesn't touch our operations. Bumpy's gaze turned icy. Frank, whenever a young black man gets set up for a wrongdoing he had no part in, that makes it our affair. Because right now, it's Marcus Robinson facing the heat. Next could be you, me, or anyone in our circle. The authorities don't give a damn about innocence. They just require a scapegoat. Chastened, Frank gave a nod. Stephanie shifted closer. Tell me what you're after, Bumpy. He listed 3 priorities. First, uncover the true perpetrator behind those killings. Second, expose the officers burying the truth. Third, gather evidence showing Marcus Robinson was miles from Manhattan on that date. Nat let out a low whistle. That's a hefty ask. The NYPD's already slammed the file shut. They won't crack it open again out of politeness. In that case, politeness is off the table, Bumpy replied. Frank Lucas kicked off with the murder site. Yeah, access to the apartment was blocked. It was locked down tight. Still, he chatted up the building's doorman, nearby residents, the postal worker, anyone who'd passed through there on the day Sarah Bennett and Lisa Carter met their end. And he uncovered a key detail. The doorman, a Polish newcomer by the name of Anton Kowalski, recalled spotting a white fellow exiting the premises right around the time of the attacks. The guy was drenched in blood, dressed in a high-end suit. He slipped into a black Cadillac and sped off. You mentioned this to the cops? Frank pressed. Anton shook his head. Never came up. They just grilled me on whether I'd noticed any black individuals. Frank's temper flared inside, though he stayed composed. Quote, 18. Anton did so vividly. Over 6 feet, dark-haired, bearing a scar on his left cheek, pushing late 30s. Frank relayed the sketch back to Bumpy. Meanwhile, as Frank probed the scene, Nat Pettigrew tapped into his long-standing ties within the NYPD. He unearthed info that sent chills down Bumpy's spine. The primary investigator on the Bennett Carter murders was Detective Frank Sullivan. Word on the street was Sullivan was corrupt to the core. No secret there. He pocketed payoffs from the Genovese crew, turning a blind eye to their illicit dealings. But the twist deepened. Sullivan's sidekick was Johnny Scar Mancini, not law enforcement, more like a thief, an addict, complete with that telltale scar on his left cheek. Nat pressed further. Mancini had faced 3 burglary busts in the last year alone. Each instance Sullivan pulled strings to spring him loose. "Looks like Sullivan's shielding this lowlife," Nat informed Bumpy. "My hunch? Mancini's the killer." Bumpy clenched his jaw, so Sullivan pinned it on Marcus to safeguard his syndicate pal. "That's how it stacks up. Then let's hunt down Johnny Mancini." Locating Johnny Mancini proved no simple task. He'd gone underground. Fortunately, Frank Lucas had deep roots in the narcotics scene, and addicts spill secrets. After 3 days of legwork, Frank pinned him to a dope den in the Lower East Side. Mancini was wasted beyond reason, hardly aware. Frank hauled him to a dim rear alley. Bumpy stood ready. "Johnny Mancini," Bumpy murmured. Mancini squinted, struggling to sharpen his vision. "Why, who the hell are you?" "The guy offering you an option. Spill the real story on Sarah Bennett and Lisa Carter, or I'll hand you to those itching to end you." Tears streamed down Mancini's face. "I never intended to off them. Went in just to steal, but they stirred and hollered, and I lost it. So you plunged the knife 57 times. I was strung out. Half of it's a blur. Sullivan promised cover if I zipped it. Bumpy produced a recorder. Repeat that. Every bit." For a solid 45 minutes, Johnny Mancini poured out his full admission onto the tape, detailing the break-in, the frenzy-fueled slaughter of the victims, how Detective Sullivan aided the cleanup by scapegoating Marcus Robinson. Once done, Bumpy held all the pieces, yet one snag remained. The recording by itself might not hold water. Prosecutors could dismiss it as forced. Corroborating evidence was essential. Enter Stephanie St. Clair, delivering big. She'd leveraged her judicial connections and secured a lawyer ready to defend Marcus Robinson without fee. David Coleman was his name, a fresh-faced, passionate civil rights advocate straight from Columbia Law School. Coleman played the tape, and his expression lit up. "This is dynamite," he declared. "Still, it's not airtight. We require alibis, folks who can vouch for Marcus's whereabouts elsewhere that day." "That's in progress," Bumpy assured him. Frank Lucas headed back to Brooklyn. He connected with Marcus's supervisor at the market, a fellow called Mr. Park. Mr. Park verified Marcus had clocked in the entire day on April 23rd when the crimes occurred. "Why hold back from the police?" Frank inquired. Mr. Park averted his eyes. "They didn't bother to check. Plus, I'm Korean. Who'd take my word?" Frank also rounded up 3 of Marcus's buddies who'd, that night, everyone involved, backed up Marcus's story. Bumpy now possessed it all: the recorded admission, the solid alibi, and clear evidence of misconduct in the force. On May 10th, 1964, Bumpy Johnson stepped into the Manhattan District Attorney's office alongside David Coleman, carrying the tape and sworn statements from Marcus's alibi supporters. The DA played the recording, his expression drained of color. Quote, 22. "Yeah, quote, 23, Bumpy replied. "The important thing is an innocent young man sits on death row while the actual murderer roams free, all thanks to a crooked detective in your department." The DA fixed his gaze on Bumpy for what felt like an eternity. Then he reached for the receiver. Quote, 24. "Marcus Robinson walked free on May 15th, 1964. The accusations against him vanished. Johnny Scar Mancini got picked up and later found guilty of the killings. Detective Frank Sullivan dodged any formal charges. He had powerful allies in high positions, though he was subtly pushed into retirement. Outside the courthouse, Ruth Robinson wrapped her arms around Bumpy Johnson and wept against his shoulder. Quote, 25. "Bumpy simply inclined his head." Quote, 26. From then on, Marcus Robinson led a peaceful existence. He always remembered Bumpy Johnson's kindness. In tribute to the man who granted him new life, he called his firstborn Ellsworth, Bumpy's true given name. Harlem held on to the memory, too. The tale of Marcus Robinson turned into folklore among the locals. Newspapers skipped it. They rarely covered tales of mobsters acting nobly, yet in the neighborhoods, the salons, the places of worship, folks passed along the account of Bumpy Johnson rescuing a wrongly accused soul. It highlighted a truth the establishment preferred to hide. Occasionally, those labeled criminals show greater integrity than the police. Sometimes, fairness emerges from the community, not the halls of justice. Bumpy Johnson stayed silent about his role in Marcus Robinson's salvation. Years down the line, when journalists probed him on it, he merely lifted his shoulders and remarked, "I only acted as any decent person would." But those in the know grasped the deeper meaning. In that spring of 1964, Bumpy Johnson didn't merely spare one existence. He reassured Harlem that a guardian still existed for them. Even amid breakdowns in the institutions, with law enforcement, judges, and leaders looking away, one individual truly cared. And that individual was Bumpy Johnson, Harlem's revered leader. If this tale touched you, tap subscribe and give that like button a hit. Pass this video to a friend who could use stories of true champions, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Ever stepped up for someone when no one else did? Tell me about it. And remember to enable alerts for more hidden chapters from Black history's iconic trailblazers.